So I'm Jack Dempsey. I'm actually born William Harrison Dempsey. I'm from Anansi, Colorado. I grew up in a very poor family with 10 siblings, and that's about it.
All right.
Oh, I'm a former boxer too, my bad.
It's okay. I'm Christine Marie Everett. I am 63. I am a former tennis player. I was born on December 21st, 1954 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Hi, my name is Nadia Komenecki. I was born November 12th, 1961 in Onesti, Romania, which is a small town in Carpathia Mountains in Bacău County, Romania.
My name is Nancy Lopez. I was born January 6, 1957. I was a professional golfer in the LPGA, and I was born in Torrance, California.
Going through your careers, families tends to be one of the big aspect of people's life. What is your family like?
My family wasn't much. My dad was a elementary school teacher and very poor, so we moved a lot between West Virginia, Colorado, and Utah. So I was always switching schools, and I really never finished elementary school really. So I kind of had to drop out from there and worked on my own. Worked as a miner with my brothers. With my 5 brothers, we all did mining and stuff. And yeah.
All right. Well, I come from a big family. I have 5 siblings and a mom and a dad. My dad, Jimmy Everett, he was also a former tennis player, and he worked at the Holiday Park, which he renamed after himself because he was such a good tennis player. All 5 of my siblings played tennis, and thanks to my father, he taught us all how to play, and all 5 of my siblings made it to the National Junior Championships and won. I remember him saying, racket back, turn sideways, step in when you hit the ball, and I remembered those 3 fundamental things forever. My dad taught me the 2-handed backhand, and it was a powerful drive shot. My dad said that I was too small and weak to swing with one hand, so he made me swing with 2. And now that's actually like the signature move that over 80% of the top 100 pros use. So I feel grateful for that. So playing with my siblings, since we all played tennis, that was really fun, but I really didn't like playing with my sister. I didn't really like to beat her because this made me feel like I was beating her and not beating her in the game of tennis, but she always told me to be mentally strong and that it'll help my game, so she helped a lot.
I was born to Jorge and Stephanie Komenecki. I had a younger brother. His name was Adrian, and we were raised in the faith of the Romanian Orthodox Church.
I was adopted by my biological mother, which is, she couldn't take care of me, so she gave me to her brother, and so now he's my father. And because she wasn't able to care for me, she shipped me to Roswell, New Mexico, where her brother stayed and his wife, Mariana, and that's where they raised me. My biological mother became my aunt until my mother, Mariana, told me that I was adopted at age 6, and I'm glad she told me because that's something very important. And that's kind of my home life right now, when I was young. Who helped y'all become the athletes you are?
Actually, I started doing it myself. I started off at just going to bars and salons and making money. I'd ask people, "Hey, would you fight me? And we'll take bets on it." I went by Kid Blackie, and that's really how I went through. Either Kid Blackie or Young Dempsey, all throughout Salt Lake, Utah. I just fought at saloons and just took bets. It wasn't until my older brother Bernie, who actually went by Jack Dempsey, started. He was actually a boxer, amateur boxer, and he. When he started getting older, he scheduled a box against a heavyweight called George Copeland. And as he started training for it, he knew he was too old. He was about 40 when he did it, and he was out of shape and not physical for it. So he put me under his name as Jack Dempsey, but it didn't really work out too well because once I showed up for the fight, I wasn't the one that people paid for, so a lot of people got real mad and left, but my brother was really the one, Bernie. He was really the one that got me into the fighting as it was.
As I talked about earlier about my family, it was my dad. Yeah, he was a former tennis pro, so he helped me and my other siblings become great tennis players. I was also taught when I was 10 years old by another former tennis pro who's dead. Her name was Maureen Connolly, and she was kind of like the Chris Evert of my young age. She was really good. But other than that, yeah, my family had a lot to do with me playing tennis and helping me grow, because without them, I probably wouldn't be the great tennis player I am today, or was.
For me, my mother stated that the whole reason I was enrolled in gymnastics was because I was a really big hassle as a child and had a lot of like energy that was like built up, so it was really difficult to manage. So she put me in gymnastics because she was hoping that it would like help me be less of a hassle.
My dad, Domingo, is the biggest reason I've gotten where I am and have accomplished the things I have. With his guidance, I was able to begin playing golf as a child. Growing up in a Mexican family, it was difficult back then, but my dad, he never wanted to complain. He was always pushing past it, and he always believed that if you were a good person and if you did the right things, then you would get the opportunities you needed. And he was always working and saving up money for me to play at country clubs and in tournaments, and this allowed me to win the New Mexico Women's Amateur Tournament at age 12, and then I went on to win several tournaments. So thanks to him, he's the reason I am the athlete I am.
So what was school life like for you guys? I know everyone's different throughout the time. For me, since my dad, like I said earlier, I had to drop out of elementary school because my dad worked so much, and actually I ended up living under trains and like train yards and sleeping in hobo camps. So my schooling experience wasn't the best. But how about you guys?
Well, I went to school, elementary, middle, and high school. Played tennis throughout, but I didn't go to college because after I graduated high school at St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale, I turned pro at the age of 18, and I signed with Wilson Tennis Rackets. So my career started very quickly after I got out of high school.
I started like doing gymnastics when I was in kindergarten, but I continued through high school and stuff, and I actually graduated from Polytechnica University of Bucharest with a degree in sports education, and I use this degree now because it qualifies me to coach gymnastics.
I played golf through my school years at Goddard High School in Roswell. My high school team didn't have a girls golf team, so I joined the boys team, and I won 2 state titles while I played with them. Thankfully, in 1974, I accepted a scholarship to the University of Tulsa in Oklahoma. I was named All-American my freshman year and Female Athlete of the Year, and won the AIAW National Intercollegiate College Championship, while also being a member of the U.S. Curtis Club and World Amateur Team. But then the next summer, I entered the U.S. Women's Open as an amateur, and I placed second.
Alright, so are there any moments at the beginning of your guys' career that you remember a lot or that they're worth mentioning?
Like I said, like after my brother gave me the chance, I started going pro. It wasn't until like the year before actually I went for my title. I actually had a really good year. I went 17 matches and won 15, lost 1 by a fixed fight. It was told by the media. I still lost, but a lot of people thought it would be fixed. And I had 1 no decision, but I took on a lot of heavyweight champs who I knocked out early in the rounds, which was nice. But that 1 loss was a little different. But other than that, not much. There wasn't much happening until my title fight.
Well, for me, I guess it started when I was 14 years old, so back in 8th grade. I was ranked the #1 nationally ranked tennis player in girls 14 under division. And then only about a year later, so in 1970, I competed in a small tournament in North Carolina, and I actually defeated the #1 women's professional tennis player, and her name was Marguerite Court. Court actually just completed the Grand Slam, and she won all 4 titles, which was really rare. I think she was the only person to do that. So when I told my dad, I called him, he fainted, and that's actually the greatest accomplishment that he'll remember to this day, because I was just a kid. I was only 14 and she was a woman, so.
I began, like I said, in kindergarten. My first team was Flacara, which means the flame. I started to train with this trainer named Caroli, and when I was 7 years old. Me and my friend were just doing cartwheels in recess, and he spotted us, and so he decided he wanted to train us. So that's how I started to get officially trained in gymnastics. In 1970, I became the youngest gymnast ever to win Romanian nationals. In 1971, I entered my first international meet and won my first all-around title. In 1973, I participated in the Junior Friendship Tournament, an important international meet for junior gymnasts, and I won the all-around gold, as well as the vault and uneven bars titles. In 1975, I participated in the European Women's Artistic Gymnastics Championships and won the all-around and gold medals in every event but the floor exercise, which I got second in. And in the pre-Olympics test in Montreat, I won the all-around and the balance beam gold medals, as well as the silver in the vault, floor, and bars, just behind my greatest rival, Nellie Kim.
I started young too. Like I said, I won some amateur tournaments at the age 12 and 13, and then I went into high school and got those 2 state titles, and then in college, I got Female Athlete of the Year and All-American, which a lot of athletes don't get, so that was an accomplishment. But then after I went pro during my first full season on the LPGA Tour in 1978, I won 9 tournaments, including 5 consecutive. I appeared on the cover of Sports Illustrated in July. I won the Vare Trophy for lowest scoring average, LPGA Rookie of the Year, LPGA Player of the Year, and was named the Associated Press Female Athlete of the Year. I won another 8 times in 1979 and won multiple times in each year from 1980 to 1984. Although I played only half seasons in 1983 and 18, and in 1984 due to the birth of my first child.
Some of my achievements during my career of gymnastics was on March 1976, I competed in the inaugural edition of the American Cup at Madison Square Garden. This is where I received a rare score of a perfect 10 in the vault and floor exercise, which means I performed a perfect routine. During the Olympics, the Summer Olympics in Montreat, during the Olympics at Montreat, I received 4 of my 7 perfect 10s on the uneven bars. I scored 3 of my 7 10s on the beam. On July 18, 1976, during the team compulsory portion of the competition, I was awarded the first perfect 10 in the Olympic gymnast history on the uneven bars. This is the medal I received for my first perfect 10, and this is the leotard I wore for my performance. A fun fact about this event was the Olympic scoreboard was not set up to show a perfect 10. So it was shown as a 1.0. So the crowd was like really confused when they saw like this 1.0 and they were like going crazy. And then when they found out that it was actually a 10, they went even more crazy. And then I had like a standing ovation. During the remainder of the games, I won 6 additional 10s. I won gold medals for individual all-around, the balance beam, and uneven bars. My main rival, again, was Nellie Kim, who later on became the second gymnast ever to get a perfect 10 score in the Olympics. I am the first Romanian gymnast to win the Olympics all-around title. I also hold the record for being the youngest Olympic gymnast all-around champion ever. Now there's a rule that gymnasts have to be 16 years old for the year that the Olympics occur, so they have to turn 16 when the Olympics occur to participate as a gymnast. But back when I was the gymnast, you had to be at least 14. So like that's one of the reasons why I will probably remain always the youngest gymnast to participate in the Olympics. In 1976, I was Female Athlete of the Year for the Associated Press, and I was the BBC Overseas Sports Personality of the Year. Because of my success, I was awarded the Sickle and Hammer Gold Medal and named Hero of Socialist Labor. I was the youngest Romanian to receive these recognitions. One thing that's really strange, but it's something that I was lucky enough to have named after me, is it's called Nadia's Theme, and it's an instrumental piece that became linked to my name because Robert Riger used it in a slow motion montage of me in the TV programs AMC's Wide World of Sports. In 1977, I was sent to Bucharest. Here my gymnastics suffered, and I was extremely unhappy though. And I got to a point when I even tried to commit suicide because of how depressed I was. I was sent back to the Carolus and won my 3rd consecutive European all-around title. I was the first gymnast ever to receive that title. During 1980, the Summer Olympics, I participated in the Moscow Summer Olympics. During these Olympics, the United States and a few other countries boycotted them. Also during these Olympics, I received 2 gold medals on the balance beam and floor exercise, and I also won 2 silver medals in the team all-around and 1 for the individual all-around. I was part of an official tour of the United States named Nadia 81. Because of this tour and the defection of the Karalis, life changed for me. After this event, I was no longer allowed to travel outside Romania. During the 1984 Summer Olympics, this was the one exception to my ban. These Olympics occurred in Los Angeles. In one of my memoirs, I stated, many believed Romania went to the Olympics because an agreement had been made with the United States not to accept defectors. I did not participate as a member of the Romania team, but as an observer. I was not allowed to speak with the Karoli, and I was closely watched the whole time. In 1984 to 1990, besides for the 1984 Olympics and a few trips to Moscow and Cuba, the government prevented me from leaving Romania. My official retirement ceremony took place in Bucharest in 1984. Another one of my memoirs stated, life took on a new bleakness. I was cut off from making the small amount of extra money that had really made a difference in my family's life. It was also insulting that a normal person in Romania had a chance to travel, whereas I could not. When my gymnastics career was over, there was no longer any need to keep me happy. I was to do as I was instructed, just as I'd done my entire life. If I was defected, I would still have been watched, but his defection brought a spotlight on my life, and it was blinding. I started to feel like a prisoner. On November 27, 1989, I defected with a group of Romanians. This dangerous journey took me through Hungary, Austria, and finally the United States. The man that helped me get out of Romania was Panay. He offered to allow that I stay with his wife and kids for a bit in their house, but this ended up leading to a ton of bad press. Because of a reporter, I was starting to be called a homewrecker. During this time, I was still not able to contact any of my friends. This seemed suspicious. Although this was a business relationship, it tarnished my name and image, but it allowed me to escape from Romania, and that was all that mattered to me.
After I had my first child, I went back to playing full-time in 1985. I posted 5 wins, 5 seconds, 5 thirds, won the money title, the scoring title, the player of the year, and was named Associate Press Female Athlete of the Year for a second time. I entered only 4 events in 1986 when my second daughter was born, but I came back with multiple wins in 1987 through 89. 3 times each in 1988 and 1989, and once again, 1 Player of the Year honors in 1988. My schedule was curtailed again in the 1990s when my third daughter was born. In 1992, I won twice. I continued to play short schedules from 11 to 18 tournaments through 2002. Then in 2003, cut back to just a half dozen or fewer events a year. I was considered to be one of the greats of women's golf, and I was the game's best player from the late 1970s to the late 1980s. I won 3 majors, and all were at the LPGA Championship at the same course in 1978, 1985, and 1989. I never won the U.S. Women's Open, but finished second 4 times, the last in 1997, when I became the first in the event's history to score under 70 for all 4 rounds, yet lost to Allison Nichols. I won the Colgate Dinah Shore in 1981, 2 years before it became a major. I was then inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame in 1987. I was a member of the United States Solheim Cup team in 1990 and was captain of the team in 2005. I retired from regular tournament play in 2002 and attempted a return in 2007 and 2008. In my return season, I played 6 tournaments, missed the cut in each, and only broke 80 in the 3 of the 12 rounds. In 2008, I played in 3 events with a low score of 76, never making the cut. I was inducted into the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame in 2002. I'm the only woman to win the LPGA Rookie of the Year, Player of the Year, and the Vera Trophy in the same season.
So, on July 4th, 1919, I got my chance at the first world title fight. It was against heavyweight world champion Jess Willard, and we met in Toledo. The biggest difference between us was I was 6'1", about 187 pounds. He was 6'6 and a half, about 245. He, compared to me, was a giant. but that size didn't matter because in the first round I was able to knock Willett down 7 times. And then I didn't win the fight later on, but the reports I heard after is I broke ribs, jaws, bones, fractured many parts of his body, everything. But because of that, I got called for having loaded gloves, which weren't true in the end. I was actually proven later by the founder of The Ring, who's a magazine. He saw me get taped before every one of my matches and knew that I was not loaded, which be a big controversy to my title fight and almost took it away from me. And another rumor I had, I was called using knuckle busters or knuckle busters. I can't remember the other name of them. Bare knuckles, yeah, those, yeah. I got called using for those, but those 2 were also failed. And throughout my career as being in a title fight, I had many defenses. One of my biggest ones, it was a year later to where I had my first title defense. It was against Billy Misk in September of 1920 in Michigan, and I was able to knock him out within 3 rounds. My next one was against during the French World War hero, George Carpentier, a fighter. We were both fighters that were very popular along the Atlantic. Carpenter was quoted the greatest boxer of the world, even though I was a world heavyweight champion. Our fight took place on July 2nd, 1921 at Boyle's 30 Acres in Jersey City, New Jersey. It actually generated the first $1 million gate fight in history, which was huge. We had a crowd of over 91,000 people, and it was actually the first event nationally broadcast over the radio. The fight was really good. I ended up beating him in the 4th round, which is huge for me. And like I said, it was called the fight of the century. It was first deemed. My last successful title fight was in September of 23 at New York City Polo Grounds against FERPO. There was 85,000 people in attendance with other 20,000 trying to get in, and I knocked down FERPO many times within the first 2 rounds, but he always got up and fought. He was a great fighter against me, even no matter how many times I knocked him down. He actually knocked me down a couple of times too, which was very surprising. I was actually able to beat him in the 2nd round by knockout, which was awesome. That also was transmitted in my heavyweight title. Throughout all my heavyweight titles, my exhibition fights, I did a lot of TV commercials. I was one of the richest athletes in the world at my time, back in the 1920s. So that was different. It wasn't until September of 26 I lost my title against Irish-American and former Marine Gene Tooney in Philadelphia. He only lost once in his career. In spite of that record, he was still an underdog to me. I was still the heavyweight champion and was still supposed to win it. That fight, I lost on points in 10 rounds, and I recorded about 120,000 people, which was one of the biggest fights I've ever had. And it was one of the largest outside of soccer or motocross or any big sports. And once I lost my title, I kind of tried making a comeback, but I really never did. So after I lost my title, I basically went to retirement, and that was the end of my fighting career. But I held my title for about 8 years of world champion, and I had a great boxing career for them.
Alright, well, like I said earlier, I turned pro when I was 18. I didn't go to college. So I actually turned pro in December of 1972, so that was around my 18th birthday. And then after I signed with Wilson Tennis Rackets. 2 years later, at the end of 1974, I became one of only 3 players to ever win 100 matches in a single season. Also in my 1974 season, I won 55 consecutive matches. I won Wimbledon in 1974, 76, and 81. I won the U.S. Open 6 of 8 years between 1975 and 82, and I became the first woman since the 1930s to do so. After 1982, I won every match I played over a 6-year period, which covered 125 straight matches in 24 tournaments. One of my strategies that I used was that I focused on every point one at a time, and I honestly think that this is how I became so successful. As the 1984 season came to a close with the Australian Open, I won my 1,000th career match, being the first player to ever do so, and then won the title, which was my 11th Grand Slam event win. In 1985, the Women's Sport Foundation named me the greatest woman athlete over the last 25 years. My final tournament match victory came at the 1989 U.S. Open, the place where I began, and I beat Monica Seles. This was my most well-played game over my 20-year career. After this career-winning moment, I finished out my legacy with the highest winning percentage, male or female, in tennis history. And then in 1995, I was the 4th player ever to be elected into the International Tennis Hall of Fame.
Alright, so now that we've all heard about our career, our greatest accomplishments, and everything else that we've done, let's talk about our personal life after our career. So for me, after I retired from boxing, I ended up owning a cultural civic center down in Mexico, which was actually, it was financed by Al Capone, but I ran it, I was the manager of it. Then in the 1920s and 30s, I owned and operated my own hotel, Hotel Barbara, which is it was based in Los Angeles. And then in 1935, I opened my own restaurant, which was called Jack Dempsey's Restaurant in New York City. It was actually across from Madison Square Garden, where a bunch of fights now happen. And I also co-owned Howard Manor in Palm Springs, California. I've been married 4 times. My first 2 were for a year or so it was just random stuff. It wasn't until my 3rd wife, who was a Broadway singer. Her name was Hannah Williams. We got married in 1933. We had 2 children, but ended up divorcing in 1943. And then I ended up remarried again to Diana Pelletelli. We were married till my death in 1983. We had one daughter who we adopted together, and then after my whole life, since the Second World War happened, I signed up to go to the war. I actually joined the New York State Guard and was given first lieutenant, but I denied it and became a lieutenant in the Coast Guard. I was released of active duty, sadly, in September 1945, and received honorable discharge from the Coast Guard in 1952. I was inducted to the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1954, and in 1970 became part of the charter class in the Utah Sports Hall of Fame, growing up there. I was inducted into the Irish American Hall of Fame also, and it wasn't until May 31st, 1983, I died of a heart failure at the age of 87 in New York City. My wife was by my side, and my final words to her were, "Don't worry, honey, I'm too mean to die." I'm now buried in Southampton Cemetery in Southampton, New York, so if you guys feel free to visit me, that's where I'll be.
Alright, I'll look into that. Alright, well, I am currently 63, so I'm just enjoying my life and reminiscing on my tennis career. But during the beginning of my career, I got engaged to a fellow pro tennis player at the time when I was only 19 years old, not very smart. Since we were both passionately involved with our sport, we decided to call off the engagement in 1976. We both wanted to strive to be the #1 tennis player in the world and didn't want to give up our careers. I will say that he was my first love, though, even after all this time. Then I found a new love, whom I was married to from 1979 to 1987. His name was John Lloyd, who was a British tennis player. That marriage ended when I had an affair with a British actor, which was not one of my biggest achievements. But luckily, my last marriage with an Olympic downhill skier, Andy Mill, gave me my 3 children, Alexander, Nicholas, and Colton, and they are my biggest blessings over my tennis career.
For me, I met my husband in 1979, but it wasn't until 1990 until we actually became friends. When we got out of the friend zone, we dated for about 4 years before we finally became engaged. The wedding was held in Bucharest in 1996 and was televised throughout Romania. This moment was very emotional for me, not just seeing my mom, but I was seeing an entire country I'd left behind. When I got married in Bucharest, there were 10,000 people on the street. People didn't go to work that day. It was emotional to see how many people cared about me. In 2006, I was blessed enough to have a son named Dylan. Later, after I retired, I was the first athlete to speak on Independence Day naturalization ceremony on July 4th, 2012. On October 2017, an area in the Olympic Park in Montreal, Canada, was renamed after me and is now named Place Nadia Comaneci. Some of my leadership roles include serving as the honorary president of Romanian Gymnastics Federation, serving as the honorary president of the Romanian Olympic Committee. I own Bart Connor Gymnastics Academy, the Perfect 10 production company, and several of my own equipment shops. I am still involved in the Olympic Games and have my own commercial air in 2004 Games. During the 2012 Games, I, along with the former basketball star John Ameki, carried the torch to the roof of the O2 Arena. I also have appeared in Tide advertisements called The Evolutionary Power, and I'm highly involved in charities like the Nadia of Children's Clinic in Bucharest.
For me, my first marriage, I was married to Houston sportcaster Tim Melton from 1979 to 1982, but shortly after we divorced, and I married Major League All-Star baseball player Ray Knight. He was then a member of the Houston Astros in October 1982 in Pelham, Georgia. We were married for 27 years, and we have three daughters. While married, we lived in Georgia, and my husband at the time's hometown of Albany. Since 1986, I hosted the Nancy Lopez Hospice Golf Classic at the Doublegate Country Club to raise money for the Albany Community Hospice, returning yearly even after my divorce from Ray in 2009. I currently reside in the Villages, Florida, where I host an annual golf tournament to benefit the charity AIM, which stands for Adventures in Movement, an organization that helps mentally challenged, visually impaired, hearing impaired, physically handicapped, and other children and adults with special needs. I have hosted the tournament since 1981 and also serve as a national ambassador with AIM, along with the Baseball Hall of Famer Joe Morgan. My main focus is on my company, Nancy Lopez Golf, in which I make a full line of women's clubs and accessories. I also do occasional television commentary here and there.
Nice to
Nice,
meet you.
nice
Nice meeting you.
Nice to
Meet
meet
you.
you. Nice
Nice
to
to
meet
meet
you.
It's great learning about all your life.
You
That
too.
is
You too.
The gathering of the greats.
Mm.